TF2's art style. Influential, iconic. You probably have a strong opinion about it. No, I don't mean that you either love or hate it. Wherever if you're connected to the TF2 community, you're most likely opinionated on which direction it should go in. As well, some will see certain new cosmetics and maps being added to the game and see it as a crime against good taste. Others will look at it and see nature running its course. Now, I could go over the various talking points and debates that both sides have had, but one thing I like to go over is the why. As in, why does this discussion even exist in the first place? What mindsets lead to people taking a liking to the original vision or whatever the community is currently making? While I do have an opinion on this matter, I'll try to remain impartial, so I'm not going to label it as, oh, this side is just nostalgia blind, or, oh, this side has no taste whatsoever, or, oh, they only argue this for money. Got all that? Good. Let's begin where TF2 started at. There are a lot of people who fervently believe that TF2's art style should not be deviated in any way, shape, or form. And the main reason because of this is that simply, there is no game that quite looks like TF2. Sure, there's a lot of games that have cartoony or stylized art styles, but none scratch the same itch. It covers a relatively unexplored setting in the gaming space, and therefore has a very specific color palette and design principles that continue to set it apart from anything else made on the market, even as new games try to follow in its footsteps. To be specific, Team Fortress 2 is an impressionistic take on 1960s Americana, with some spy tech sprinkled in. The environments consist of deserts and industrial plants as fronts for high-technology bases, with very clear imperfections sprinkled in. The environmental colors are usually muted, which allows the bright blue and red mercenaries to stand out, which not only make the game beautiful, but also serve as a practical gameplay function to distinguish teams. Another element of TF2 that's appealing is the stylization. As well as it's not overly realistic and tends to cut out detail purposely, it's not overly cartoony, making it tastefully stylistic. The character designs, of course, are also fantastic, having 9 of those iconic characters in gaming, having the right amount of detail to understand to know what they're about without being cluttered. And this is still a surface level analysis. People who know a lot more about art and TF2 have made more comprehensive looks at the artistry of the game. It's also just not a super niche audience that cares about the artistry of the game either, as a Team Fortress 2 website has a section dedicated to the artwork of the game, which includes promotional artwork for the updates, concept art for the game's early period, and a do-it-yourself kit containing assets and fonts used in the game. Clearly, TF2's art style is important to a large portion of the player base, so preserving it would obviously be the top priority for most zealous players. However, there's another half of TF2's appeal for art, which is where I'd like to introduce the other side of the argument. TF2 is also an inherently moldable game, in that it manifests in multiple ways. For gameplay, community servers allow a large variety of settings, meaning you can either make games work organized and competitive by limiting team sizes and having weapon blacklists, or just make a server where you play 2 for it all day with 32 players. It's also very flexible visually, as besides cranking down your graphics to comically low degrees or changing your FOV and view models, the game also has plenty of client-side mods like different HUDs or changing weapon models. These very visual mods would be made early on in the game's history and would be noticed by Valve, as they would get implemented into the game as official features, crediting the original creators, of course. Eventually, this would lead to the Steam Workshop being created, as a way for community creators and modders to add their own stuff to the game and also get paid. From this point onwards, the community and Valve would have a symbiotic relationship, as Valve gets new high-quality cosmetics and maps to be put into the game, and community members get their work immortalized in one of the greatest video games of all time, while also getting some money as a sick bonus. This leads to people viewing the community content on the same pedestal as Valve's edition lay on, with maps like Steel and cosmetics like the Frontrunner being some of the highest quality additions to the game that Valve employees didn't even touch. Combine that with the prevalence of community servers exposing more people to custom maps, and the fact that all Valve adds to the game nowadays is community creations, and many people see workshoppers as the new masters of the game. Yet the community now is in charge, why shouldn't they also dictate how the game looks? After all, the art style wasn't completely consistent under Valve. As you look at the artwork for promotional material compared to the concept artwork, you can tell there's been a gradual shift in how TF2 looks. So why not embrace it? This is the mindset of those who don't view some of the gaudier cosmetics in TF2 as a problem, as they view TF2 more as a canvas rather than an art piece, and a few missteps are a small price to pay for self-expression. And that's the crux of this divide at the end of the day, viewing TF2 as a piece of art that deserves to be preserved, or seeing it as a canvas that which anyone is allowed to make their own mark on it, as long as that mark doesn't cross certain lines. So, there's a general divide of TF2's perception and how it's resulted in the current art style debate. Now it's time for me to hop off the fence and take a stance on the issue myself. It shouldn't be a surprise if you know my previous videos, but I am a firm believer that Team Fortress 2 should stick more strictly to its original artistic vision rather than become another anything goes game. Many people, myself included, were initially drawn to this game due to its strong artistic sensibilities, and making this game look like everything else on the market with tacky cosmetics and out-of-place crossovers won't attract a new audience. They'll just keep playing Fortnite, or Overwatch, or Marvel Rivals, or any other game with similarly garish art directions. And it doesn't matter either that Valve already made or accepted items that by their own standard violated the art style. If there was a hole in the roof, the solution is never to tear down the whole roof for the sake of consistency. That's just stupid. Furthermore, while I talked about how the community ended up contributing a lot of great stuff to the game, said content was more carefully curated and fell under Valve's guidelines on what to add into the game that are still here to this day. But with more modern updates, it's getting hard to justify if certain items belong in the game by Valve's own standards. Rules are important, and limitations breed creativity, so just throwing every regulation out the wayside just results in a deluge of tacky garbage that doesn't fit with each other. And this isn't even talking about the other consequences of adding unfitting items, like certain cosmetics messing with team recognition, or the size of the game getting bigger and bigger when most of these cosmetics are going to be ignored by the player base. One more argument I'd like to cover is the notion that making the game's art style wackier and looser is somehow going to extend the game's lifespan.
You've got two options. You can either keep TF2 how it was back in 2013, and you have your little fucking nostalgia jerk off every time you play it, okay? And the game dies how it is. Or you let it adapt to the times, and you keep it going for a bit longer, okay? That's the decision you have to take.
First of all, I already covered how making TF2 look like everything else won't somehow attract all the Fortnite kids to the game, as I can say with full confidence that absolutely no one is playing these games for weapon charm specifically. Second of all, even if this idiotic plan somehow works, I don't think targeting TF2's unique charm for the sake of longevity is some noble cause. This isn't preservation of a classic, it's more like the plan of every single From Software villain. If you really want TF2 to last another decade, it would be more worthwhile to press Valve to implement better matchfighting systems such as the previously refined quick play, or something new entirely, or add better tutorials so new players can actually figure out how to play the game. TF2 isn't yours to control, so let's enjoy its unique nature instead of trying to make it look like every other FPS game on the market, which has been a disaster for every other game that tried that. Alright, that got a bit heated. Let's chill out for a bit and circle back to the video's main topic, which is why this divide in the player base exists in the first place. To conclude this video, I believe the divide in opinions on the art style mainly stem from the adherence of TF2 as an art form, or TF2 as a form of the community's expression. The former comes from TF2's inherent beauty which Valve is willing to openly celebrate, and the latter from the deep history of TF2's community changing the game again which Valve will openly promote. Neither are detestable causes, as we both have a reasonable source to inform why someone would believe the cause. So, the next time you get into an argument with someone about the art style, just remember that your opponent's probably not grifting, and make sure to engage in good faith. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully I can see you next time. Goodbye.